Before we get started, I want to show you what you're missing out on here. You know?
Yeah.
It could be yours for the price of a new home in Washington.
No, that's all yours.
Look how beautiful it is, Chelle. Look at that.
Gorgeous.
It's gorgeous.
All yours. I don't need it.
Oh, I like your shirt. Vampires, huh? Oh, Forks, Washington. How cute. Oh my gosh, that's adorable. Hi, I'm Amy, and this is A-Star Reads, and welcome to a discussion and review of two of the books from the Robin Hobb Realm of the Elderlings series. The first two, so that is Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince, which was a short story, about 200 pages. And then that's like the 0.5 book in the whole Realm of the Elderlings series. And then we're going to also be discussing The Assassin's Apprentice. Ooh. I've been talking too fast and not breathing lately.
That's actually impressive, because I think you need air to speak.
I just build a whole bunch and go. Anyways, the second book is The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, which is her first book in the whole Farseer trilogy.
Okay, so I failed. I failed to introduce Chelle, which is pretty rotten of me. Sorry, Chelle. So Chelle and I have been friends for 20 years. She was kind enough to agree to read the whole Realm of the Elderlings series with me. And so here's our first review and discussion of the first two books in the series. And if you'd like to see more about Chelle or learn more about her, we actually did a book review and discussion on The Martian by Andy Weir. So if you want to check that out, I'm going to link that here.
Okay, so The Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince was about...
Oh, you want me to chime in here?
Yeah.
Okay. It's two short stories about the world, told from the point of view of the nursemaid to document what actually happened during these two separate time periods.
Yeah, and the nursemaid is the nursemaid for Princess Caution. And I don't know where in the whole Farseer line she takes place, because I don't really have a timeline for any of this. Her son kind of tells her that she needs to record the truth about all the things that happened politically during this time, because a lot of people are starting to believe these lies that are getting out. And she's the only person who's seen everything firsthand and actually can record the truth so that future generations will actually know what happened. Sort of like what happens to the Farseer line because of these events that occurred. So in the first part of the story, the nursemaid is telling about Princess Caution herself, and she's called the Willful Princess because she's very willful. She wants to do whatever the heck she wants to do, and her name of Caution is usually given to these children when they're born. They're kind of supposed to reflect that personality trait, but Princess Caution definitely does not reflect caution. She's a spoiled princess. She ends up falling in love and making a baby. And that's kind of where the end of her story happens. I mean, there's a lot more that goes on in there, but it's a short story, so there's not too much that we can really talk about without giving it away. And then the second story is about her son, who is a bastard child, and sort of what happens during his lifetime, and then how these two stories affect the way things go within the kingdom. One of the things I really liked a lot about this book was that it did discuss wit, the magic of wit, and how it became this taboo magic that people aren't supposed to discuss and use. And during the time of this book, it wasn't taboo. Like, wit was just another magic. Okay, Chelle, what did you think of The Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince?
I think I rated it a 4. I liked Robin Hobb's writing style, and I really like how she set up the book. I think if you just told these stories as stories, you would hate them because they're depressing. Both the stories are extremely sad. You don't form any attachments to any of the characters. Their nursemaid is a complete piece of work. The princess too. You feel sympathy for the Piebald Prince, but you never really feel connected to him.
No.
So the stories themselves is kind of a history, and I'm not a huge history fan, but the way that she set it up made me like the book a lot despite all that. Like, the fact that this was her documenting what happened, being completely honest, because she does not paint herself in a good light. She's responsible for a lot of the stuff that happened. So you don't like her, but she's willing to put that down too, because her son tells her that she needs to, he's a bard, I guess, right? Bard.
Yeah.
So in this, it's not just, you know, being a bard in this time or kingdom or whatever isn't just, you know, making music. It's being a truth teller.
Yeah.
So he insists that because they know what really happened during this time, that's all being covered up and being portrayed horribly, that they need to write the truth completely with full honesty so that you can prove that it's the truth, because you wouldn't admit this stuff if it wasn't.
Oh no, it doesn't look good on any of them.
So that made the book for me.
Okay.
Made me interested.
Yeah. I didn't rate it as highly as you did, but I still thought it was interesting. I definitely think I will enjoy it even more as I read more of the books, because I'm seeing how these little bits of history are starting to play into some of the other stuff we're learning as we're reading the series. I didn't like the characters at all, and I wasn't even that interested in them half the time, so that was part of the problem, was I just didn't find them that interesting. The story is valuable for what it provides to this huge epic of the realm of the Elderlings, I think. I totally get that, and I wanted to rate it higher, and I thought maybe I just don't like short stories, but spoiler alert, that's not true. We'll find out in another video. I agree that Robin Hobb is a fantastic writer, and I will say that. I'm sure when I read every single one of her books, I'll say that she's an incredible writer. She knows exactly what she's doing, and the way she uses her words is intentional. But it wasn't my favorite. It just wasn't my favorite, and I'm just accepting that. And really, it's not necessarily because of the quality of the story, it's because of the content for me. Like I said before, I appreciate the conversation about the wit, because that's something that really doesn't get explained in Assassin's Apprentice, and so having this explanation is perfect. I guess what I don't understand is, where does the Piebald Prince in the Farseer line, where does he show up? Like, who is he related to? He didn't have any children of his own, right? So who's he related to? How does he play into the whole Farseer line? That's what, and I'm wondering if we'll find that out later.
I mean, he doesn't play into it at all, because Princess Caution doesn't have any more kids, and neither does he. So that line dies with them, because it goes to the cousin, right?
Yeah, it does. I guess we probably won't know the real significance of this story until we find out more about the history of the family line.
I did read that her records do come into play.
Okay.
Somewhere in the series, they find her records.
Okay, well that's interesting.
So
That is interesting.
that's where this comes into. And that's why there's some debate on where you should read this in the series lines. It is 0.5 because I think of the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to actually being a part of the entire story, they say you should read it later on when you understand more of the duchies. What do you
Duchies. Duchies. I don't think it's duckies. I like duckies though.
I call it duckies. That's what I'm gonna call it.
Yeah, but see that how do you know that? Like, where does it show that?
I was looking through Goodreads, the comments, like not fully, but kind of just like, what did people think of this book? And then some people were saying to read it further along because the records are found.
Okay. Maybe I'd have liked it more if I read it later. I don't know.
It's still not a happy story. It's still not.
I mean, these aren't people you like. These aren't people like, wow, what a family legacy. I'd love to be part of that family.
You don't, well, okay. So you don't see much of him, like almost at all, but Redbird, isn't that his name?
It could be.
I don't remember. I think that was his name.
Yeah, but you don't see him hardly at all. You know,
No,
based off what
but
she's
you
said
like
about
him.
him.
Yeah.
Because he's not a horrible person, and neither is the Piebald Prince. He's not a horrible person. It's a short story, so you're not getting a full view of these people, and they don't have a chance to redeem themselves in your eyes as a reader. Because you certainly don't get that for Princess Caution. She is awful. Awful. Don't like her at all. Same with the nursemaid. I never go, she's at least got some redeeming qualities.
But I did feel that the Piebald Prince and Redbird could have made their own, well, not the prince so much because his story is a little cut short, but but I would have liked to know more about them.
Yeah.
Actually, both of them were cut short, weren't they?
Yeah, that's why the nursemaid has to write the story and Redbird doesn't, because I think how does he die?
The new prince, I think. Because he starts speaking the truth, right?
Right. Yeah. It's a really short story, and it will definitely contribute to the Farseer trilogy, right? But I don't necessarily think that you need to read it first before you read everything else, because apparently we didn't really need to do that.
It does explain right away what's his name's reaction to Wit. I mean, to what's his name?
Yeah. Birch's reaction to Fitz.
You understood where I was going there.
I did. I can read your mind, little lady. That was never really explained much in the Assassin's Apprentice.
No.
So, well, speaking of Assassin's Apprentice, let's talk about that one. So the Assassin's Apprentice is about this young boy named Fitz. When we meet Fitz, he's like 6 years old, and his grandfather is actually dropping him off at Prince Verity's camp in like this town. He basically tells them when he drops off this boy Fitz that your brother, Prince Chivalry, came and made it with my daughter, and this is the result of their lovemaking, and I don't want to take care of this child because it costs me money, and since your brother, the Prince Chivalry, decided to create this young one, you need to take care of him, he's yours. And so this poor 6-year-old kid named Fitz gets pulled away from his family, and, well, I guess placed with his other part of his family. He gets kind of put in the care of Birch, who is Prince Chivalry's
stable master,
but he has a much larger role than a stable master, but he's basically Prince Chivalry's stable master, and they finally go off to the castle, which is Buckkeep, and that's where Fitz needs to start his life living as the bastard son of Chivalry within the kingdom, the castle. Because he's a son of Chivalry, he's also seen as a threat, though. He's not quite high up enough in the line to have the chance of being king, but if he were to go off and, say, start an army or something, he has a good chance of taking things over. Politically, he's a threat. Let's just put it that way. He's a threat politically, and so the king, in order to kind of lessen the threat, decides he's going to turn Fitz into this assassin, a royal assassin. So he has loyalty to the king. And that's basically what this story is about. It's the setting up of Fitz within the castle, teaching him how to become an assassin. And in the meantime, though, he learns how to become a stable hand because he's living with Birch in the beginning. And then he also learns how to become a scribe because they kind of don't know what to do with him. And then he also starts taking his assassin courses. There's a lot of other things that happen because it's a very complex story, but that's the basic gist, I would say. What do you think, Chelle?
Yes.
Thank you for adding so much insight.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Okay, what'd you think of this book, Chelle?
I liked it.
Wow. You are good at this.
I think I gave it a 3.
No.
I think so.
Did you give it a 3? No.
I think so.
You gave it a 4.
There was parts that I really liked and there was parts that I didn't. This did make me realize that I'm not the biggest fan of fantasy books, adult fantasy books.
Well, you like urban fantasy, so that's not completely true.
Yeah, I'm not as fond of books that rely heavily on description. I don't know. I think I used to. I was talking to somebody else about this too. I think I used to really enjoy books like this, but as I've gotten older, I apparently have less patience.
Isn't that supposed to be the other way around? You're supposed to have more patience as you get older?
I don't know. Or maybe it's because a lot of the books, but this one I did read, but a lot of books I listened to. And so the longer chapters of descriptions get very boring for me. But I'm a fast reader, so maybe reading it makes it a little bit less tedious for me. I did read The Assassin's Apprentice, but I still had trouble with some of the sections. Like, I know it's about building up. I just finished the Wheel of Time series, and I was very about the first 10 books. First 11 books of the series. I kept going, though, and the last 3 books blew my mind. They were some of my favorite books ever. But I had to get to book 12.
You don't like building things up.
Apparently that's it. When there's not a lot of action and you're just describing the world and everything like that, I'm not as fascinated with that. I like faster moving stories. So long chapters of descriptions or things that don't make sense now but maybe come into play later in other books. But for now, it's just like, why do I need a couple chapters on this? It does not make any sense to the story. Is it just filler? Does this matter later? Because chances are I'm not going to remember it.
That is a problem. As you get older, you tend to forget things more.
There were definitely parts that I had a hard time putting down, but there was a lot of parts that I had no problem putting it down.
Yeah, I really liked it. I gave it 4.5 stars. I did expect to like it more than I did, just because of all the hype and just because I kind of thought I would really be into this series. And I think that I'm going to be. Couldn't rate this one as high as a 5-star because it was just setting things up. You're meeting the characters, you're learning about the setting. There was so much political intrigue in this that I don't know if I caught everything all the time. There's a lot of things that they have to continually think about and worry about and stress about, and relationships that they have to maintain, and what's going on within the kingdom and what's going on with the different duchies.
You're not fun. I really think we should just change it to duckies.
Okay, from here on out, I will try to remember to call it duckies. I liked all the details. I really thought it was very creative. There were so many different elements added to the story, so it didn't feel like it was just this simple storyline that went along with one person or a couple people around him. And I felt like there were so many different elements coming into it that later on will make a lot more sense. So yeah, it was a book where you're building things up. But I like the characters, and you start really liking them, and I can't wait to read the next couple books so I can learn more about the characters that I especially liked. One of my favorite characters was the Fool. I loved the Fool. He just was
He was one of my favorites too.
He's quite possibly my favorite character. At least we'll find out going forward. I like Fitz. He's definitely a sympathetic character. He's a nice kid. He's not too complex, in my opinion, as his character. And maybe that'll change in the next book. Birch was interesting. And this is a little spoilery. Well, actually, no, this is just speculation. But you and I were both wondering if maybe he has wit, right?
I think, ish. I'm fairly certain he has it. They never say it, but how else would he recognize that Fitz is using it if he doesn't have some sense of it himself?
And the fact that he's so against it. He's not the kind of guy who really follows all the rules. He's not a sheep, like, I'm going to follow everybody else, or I'm going to do what they say because it's the right thing to do. He doesn't come across as that kind of character at all. So the fact that he's so, you can't use the wit because it's so bad, and it just seems a little extreme. Like, his reaction to the wit seems a bit extreme. And it sounds like Birch is going to be a pretty big player going forward. He's sort of given his allegiance to Fitz, and I like Birch a lot, so I'm happy about that. I want to know more about the Fool because he's probably the most mysterious and fascinating of all the characters.
I have mixed feelings about Birch.
I know you do, because you don't like self-righteous people.
I really don't like self-righteous people. Mixed feelings about that one.
Yeah, I know. This is an argument that Chelle and I have had for quite a while, because we used to read this series called the Anita Blake series, and there's just one character named Richard who I always liked, but he's also this very self-righteous character who fights against who he is constantly because he doesn't want to be a werewolf that he is. And so he's always like fighting against his true nature, and Chelle hates him, and I always liked Richard a lot.
I hate him so much. You know, you haven't read far enough into that series. Just gets worse.
Oh, I know, and there's definitely a point where he gets to be too much, and that's kind of when I changed my allegiances to Micah, so.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, not at all important to this video, but if I remember correctly, Laurel K. Hamilton based Richard off her, like, ex-husband.
Oh, dear. I can see that he is a troubled character. He's a troubled human being.
I hate him so much.
Anyways, the whole point of that is to say that Birch is kind of similar. And if Birch has the wit, then he's very much like Richard because he's trying to deny something that is innate in him. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Out on other people.
He does. He takes it out on other people. Yeah.
Fitz is just a young boy. Like, and he pretty much multiple times goes, I'm done with you. Get out of here. I don't want to see you ever again. And I'm like, dude, you got some issues.
But what if he's trying to protect Fitz? He's trying to keep Fitz alive.
Yes, but destroying him emotionally? I mean, this kid has no family. Birch, for a while, is his only, like, connection to a person.
Yeah, but Birch is human. Humans make mistakes. They screw up. They don't make the right choices all the time, Chelle. I mean, that's human nature. We've all made bad choices, and we hope that people still love us despite that.
I don't know. I just feel like he's unnecessarily cruel multiple times in his self-righteousness.
You know, you want fiction to be as fiction gets.
You're right. It is a personality type that I absolutely cannot stand.
I've noticed this. Whenever we read books that have a character similar to this, it's like the one character that you can't stand the most because there's something about that personality type that just rubs you the wrong way. Fascinating. Fascinating character study on Chelle. Well, I like him. And I think there's hope.
I liked him sometimes.
Yeah.
Definitely towards the end, I liked him more when he kind of let go of some of that to really care about Fitz. I guess man, this boy's been through so much.
Yeah.
And he's got such a rough life. And there's so many periods of this book. I mean, he's suicidal at one point. Like, he just has had such a rough life. And so anytime somebody I feel is supposed to protect him or is supposed to help him or, you know, somebody that's supposed to mean something, just it makes it rougher for me. Like, having a boy myself. Like, I just want to be like, what the F is your problem? He needs you.
Then there's characters in here that are some of the worst characters. You hate them so much. She does a good job of creating these awful, awful characters.
The prince.
You hate the prince. I hate... What was his name?
Galen.
Galen. Oh, Galen. He's the one that teaches the skill.
Yeah, him and the prince. Which I mean, they're related, so
That makes sense. It's
truly a horribleness runs in that side of the family.
So awful. And it sounds like their mother was pretty awful too. From the things that are said about her, she was a pretty rotten person as well.
Yeah, which
that line of people can be dead.
Yes, they were truly horrible.
Yeah.
And like the first book, this was not a happy book.
No, I mean, it wasn't.
It's not a happy book. It's a sad book.
I'm just thinking, Chelle, I made you read this series, and we've just started, and I've heard that her writing doesn't get any happier. So I've made you start this series of really long, descriptive books that are all sad. Will our friendship survive this?
We will see.
I really like later in the book, and I think you did too, when we go to the Winterland.
Yes.
What was it called? Out in the
Despite
winter.
everything there, I liked the characters there. It was very action-packed towards the end, and it was depressing. But it had some good characters over there.
Oh, I know.
Really wanted to learn more. I really liked the prince over there.
Spoiler alert, the prince dies.
And it was very sad. I think that might have been the closest to crying. I don't think I cried in this book, but I think that might have been the closest to it that I came, because you really liked him.
Yeah, you know, and if he stuck around, he would have been my favorite character. Like, he could have been my favorite character easily. He was so likable and so interesting.
Very intelligent, you know.
Well, and he was also just the most realistic, you know, and most rational. He was absolutely the most rational, because he even knew when there was going to be intrigue against him. He continued to think highly of Fitz, even though he knew that he couldn't trust Fitz, because Fitz had a job that was supposed to take him out.
It made me hate what's his name even more. Oh, I hate him. I don't even remember his name anymore. I blocked it out. Regal?
Regal, that's it, Regal. Regal is a royal asshole.
Yeah.
He's not a good guy. He's not a good guy. But Galen is worse. Galen just, ugh.
I think Regal is worse because Galen gets his comeuppance.
Well, okay, that's a good point. Regal does get away with shit.
When Verity, oh man, when he gets Galen, I was so thrilled. That might have been the best part of the book. I really like Verity. He's not the greatest, like, uncle a boy could have, but I liked him a lot. Like, he was never mean to Fitz. He was always, you know, kind, if dismissive some of the time.
Yeah.
But he truly cares about his kingdom. He's got a great sense of honor.
Yeah.
And of all the people in that royal line, he's the only one that you actually like as a person.
And Fitz. And
you don't really know enough of chivalry whether to like him really or not. I feel like it sounded like, even though he might not have been a bad person, I feel like he was a selfish person.
Yeah. From
the choices that he made. I like Verity's new wife.
Yes. She's the princess from the Winterland area.
Mm-hmm. And I'm very interested to see where that storyline goes with Verity and her. Like, I liked them as characters, and I want to see more of them.
I like Slade too. Did you like Slade?
Who's Slade?
Slade's the assassin trainer. The
Isn't
older
his
guy.
name PH?
Oh, Shade. That's right. It's Shade. It's not Slade.
I'm like, Slade. Man,
Shade.
I know I don't always understand how to say these things, but that's an interesting combination.
Shade. I don't know. It's the dude. No, what'd you think about him?
He's a very interesting character too. I like him.
He reminds me of Merlin.
A little bit. Yeah, it does have very much of a Arthurian feel there. The young boy and the old word.
I very much have and he's kind of got that quirky sense of humor that Merlin did. Mm-hmm. At least from the Stone, which is one of my favorite Disney movies. Like, he has that quirky, sarcastic sort of sense of humor, and I enjoy that about him. But it's hard to tell where his loyalties lie. That's the problem with him, because he is very loyal to the king, but the king's a bit of a jerk, or he seems to kind of not always go with what the king says.
Maybe not to agree with it, but he seems to follow it.
That's a good point. Oh, you and I were talking about the style of this book, and you were wondering what perspective it was from.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah, so it fits. It's actually fits when he's older. Each section is the beginning of the story that he's telling about the line of the Farseer, at least the portion of history that he was alive for. He writes the first section, that's him writing about the information about the family, and then he goes into his own reminiscences about that period, kind of expounds on what he's writing, but more from a personal perspective. Seems like Robin Hobb really likes to write books from, like, a narrator is one of the people who was present telling about their history, or kind of writing down the history for the records, in a sense. At least that's how the first book was, and how this series seems to be.
I didn't think about it much until the end. Like, I mean, I knew that there was some form of writing, but I I wasn't sure whose it was. And I didn't even really think about it at first because a lot of it is, like a little history, a story of something else that ties into it, and just random like notations. But it wasn't until the end, I think the last chapter even, that I was like, so wait, who's telling this? Oh, I remember a question that you had about it, or a thought process that you had about it, and that was the different forms of magic.
Yeah, we've learned about wit. We learned about that early on. And then we also were learning about skill. It's not only in the Farseer line, and we couldn't figure that out. Is it only Farseer descendants that have skill, or is it, no, it can't be because Galen has it. So it's something that you can develop.
I don't know. I thought it did sound like you had to have a spark of it, or you had to have something in order to get better at it. And there's varying degrees of power level in it.
Right.
So it does sound like at least something it does need to be, you need to be born with it. You're right. Galen has it. He's not technically a Farseer.
Right.
But he's also born of a queen. And you know how royal families marry. So, I mean, there could be way back a few generations a connection to the Farseer, because marrying third cousins,
first cousins,
or cousins and whatnot is possible. I don't know. They didn't really speak about that kind of stuff, but
yeah, they didn't.
That does tend to be like a royalty thing.
They said initially it came from the Out Islanders, but it was only the people that were the Farseer line that came to the New Kingdom that developed the skill. People from the Out Islanders don't have the skill. I remember reading that. I just couldn't understand then how Galen or some of the other people, like, they kind of just pull these random kids in to learn the skill. And so I just didn't understand. One of them for
sure was a relative.
Right.
But what, wasn't one of them a maid?
I don't remember.
Or like a serving girl?
The problem is there's so many details in this book that it's really hard to retain all of them. Did they see that she had some kind of propensity for?
Well, Galen is the one who decided on who would take the class, right? So maybe he did some kind of scrying type thing on them. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
They didn't really talk about it.
So my question was, is Fitz actually ever using the skill, or is he using the wit and people aren't aware that the wit he's using can cross over in a sense? Or are the skill and the wit a root of the same kind of magic, and just the way it's used is different? Because to me it felt like the way that Fitz was using the skill was different than the way other people were using the skill, and he had more powers with the skill than say Verity did, because he was able to like see things that I don't think Verity and some of them could see with his skill.
Well, I mean, the wit is being able to talk and connect to animals, and the skill is being able to talk and communicate with people. So
people are animals.
But people with the skill don't have the wit.
Right.
Do all the people with the wit have the skill? We don't know that.
Is Fitz's version of the wit compatible with the skill?
Or does he just have both?
I mean, that could be true. It just seemed different the way he used it. But it also could be because he had such little confidence in himself that he wasn't using it in the way that someone who knows that they have the skill or has been trained properly to use it would use it.
Because he
really
wasn't.
Huh?
Yeah, because he wasn't. I mean, Galen and Galen intentionally blocked him off from it. So, or put into his mind that he couldn't do it.
Yeah. God, Galen. What a jerk. Well, I'm really excited to see where this series goes. I'll be interested to see what Fitz turns out to be like, because I feel like he's young during this whole book. He's like 6 to 17 years old, so he's not really that developed as a character, personality-wise. He's still trying to figure himself out in a lot of ways. So I'm wondering if this next book, maybe we'll start seeing more of a personality from him. Next
book, he's going to be dealing with his new handicaps, right? As well as continuing his job as the assassin.
What are his handicaps again?
He's not recovered from the poison.
Oh, that's right.
We have a lot to learn still. She kind of left it on a decent, like, well, what's going to happen to him now? Can he be a royal assassin anymore? He's not paralyzed, but he doesn't have full control of his limbs, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's lasted a while, isn't it? Like, it's been a little while since that happened, and he's still struggling.
Yeah, he's not recovered, and they think it's permanent at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know if that gets fixed at some point, but I mean, to be an assassin, even though he usually deals with poisons, you do have to have a level of stealth, which he can no longer do. Of course, this next book is called Royal Assassin, so something's got to change. But
Yeah.
we
Oh,
are currently left with his life is he's not even sure if he's going back at one point, right? He's like, maybe I should just leave.
Yeah.
You know, I can't do my job anymore.
but he can't leave though. Didn't Birch say that? Like, you know, you may want to, but you can't, sort of
Yeah.
thing.
So, yeah. So where does that leave him?
Yeah. As far as like where the storyline's going to go, it's obvious that we're going to be heading into the red ships and figuring out how to handle that situation because it's completely out of control. And then also the people within Tilth and the farmlands are starting to struggle too because
Hey, you remember the name?
but that's only one of the other duckies.
See, so much more fun to call them duckies.
Those were our reviews of the first two books in the Realm of the Elderlings series. I really liked them. Well, no, I really liked the second one. Didn't really like the first one. Chelle liked the first one, didn't really like the second one.
I liked them both.
Okay, Chelle liked them both. If you've read these books, either of them, let us know what you thought about in the comment section down below because I know there's so many people that loved this series. I'd be curious what you guys thought, especially about Assassin's Apprentice because it was sort of a developmental book. And then I'd be really curious if you've read The Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince, what you thought about it, and if it really does come in handy later on, like where would you have read that book in the series?
I said I would be interested in that too.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen on the comment section down below, and if you like this video, click the like button and subscribe so you can see the next time I have my wonderful Shelley on that lovely, charming, happy face right over there. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you later. Bye.